the highlights, though. A few years later, when our governor was standing on the steps of Foster Auditorium, man, I was only about 2 rows back, and the federal man stood, don't know all to step aside, sir. This is now a federal issue, and to this day, I can remember my mind's eye seeing Vivian, seeing that transition take place and that change take place. And I got goosebumps talking about it, thinking about it.
Beat Everyone is brought to you by Broadway Joe's Fantasy Sports, inspired by football legend Joe Namath. Embrace the thrill of daily fantasy sports like never before in a new app coming soon.
Welcome to Beat Everyone. I am Ben Flanagan with AL.com. I'm here with AL.com Alabama football writer Michael Casagrande, and we're also back with the man with the voice of gold, Mr. Eli Gold. And today is even more special than usual. We have not one Alabama legend, but two. A national championship winning quarterback under Paul Bear Bryant, a Super Bowl champion and MVP, Pro Bowler, AFL champion and MVP. He's in the Pro Football Hall of Fame from Beaver Falls, Pennsylvania, one of the most beloved and celebrated figures in all of sports history, Joe Namath. Mr. Namath, thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you, fellas. It's always a treat to visit with Eli, and it's, of course, good to see you guys, too. But I love the Crimson Tide in Alabama, man, so this is a treat for me to be able to visit.
You're looking great, Joe. How you doing? You feeling good?
I'm feeling well enough, you know. It's imperfect, but I thank God every day just still being around.
And the family as well?
Yes, that's the main thing. The family, both daughters. I have 2 daughters, and they each have 3 children. My daughter Jessica lives next door to me, so I get to visit with the 3 going on 4-year-old and the 7-year-old going on 8. And in fact, he'll be 8 on Thursday.
Cool.
And he has an older sister that's 13, so it's a real blessing.
Do the kids understand who their grandfather is and what he has done in the sports world over the years?
Well, they know I'm Papa, Grandpa, and I imagine their mamas have mentioned something, and they can't help but looking at some of these pictures of friends, you know, and things that I've been lucky enough to experience.
How have you and the family managed your celebrity status? That's something I've always watched other big name guys have to deal with. Is it difficult for you to just go to the grocery store, go to the convenience store, or is it a pain in the butt?
Nothing's perfect, all right? But first of all, things start at home. My family, my mother, my father, etc. And I was taught to treat people the way you want them to treat your family, your friends.
Mm-hmm.
And every day if I meet someone new, that's normal. Hi, yeah, you know, we touch base, we touch them. I want them to feel the way they would make my family feel. You understand that? You treat people the way you want to be treated,
sure,
or the way you want people to treat yours. And we get along pretty well that way.
Good. You know, for me, this is such a treat, and I've known you for decades now. But when I grew up in New York City, my dad and I had season tickets to the New York Titans, the predecessors, of course, to the Jets. And then we had season tickets to the Jets, and I would sit in the upper deck behind the goalposts and cheer like crazy for Joe Namath. I've had the luxury. I never saw you collegiately, but I have seen you from a long way back, and it's an honor to have been able to sit here and over the years work with you and learn from you.
Oh, we've been in the press box a few times, Eli, right? I mean,
yes.
You mentioned that Chase Stadium and sitting up at that closed end. The first time my rookie season, my mother came up from Pennsylvania in a bus with some people to watch a game, and they sat her. The tickets I got, I didn't even look at them. They give you 2 tickets for the game, right? If you're a player. I didn't even look at them where they're located in the stadium. They were up there. right up at the end of the end zone, up in the second deck there, man.
Yep,
And
yep.
she told me afterwards, "Oh, honey, I love you, and I want to see you play." She said, "But I can't come to the games anymore." I said, "Well, why not? What do you mean?" She said, "I was sitting way up there." She said, "I had a hard time getting there and then seeing, you know." So
Weeb Eubank looked slim and trim from where she was sitting.
I don't know about that trim part, boy, but he was a huge man. The
Yeah.
size stature didn't come into play. He's the only coach I think to this day that won world championships in two different leagues,
Yes.
NFL and the AFL.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's go back, Joe, and I'm usurping the time from my two buddies right here, but this is just one of those times where I just love to chat with you. You mentioned your mama coming in with friends from Pennsylvania. How did your recruiting go? I mean, why did a guy from Beaver Falls pick Tuscaloosa, Alabama?
Well, first of all, I didn't want to go to college. I wanted to play baseball. I had a chance to sign a contract with the old Chicago Cubs, and I guess they're
Okay.
still there. But my mother wanted me to go to college. Howard Schnellenberger had showed up. He came to the house unannounced,
Really?
still at home, trying to figure out what to do. And it was like early September or something, man. It was getting down to crunch time. And he came to the house. My mother and I were living together. And knock at the door and opened the door, and you remember Howard Schnellenberger, of course. He had a
Sure.
deep voice, you know, and he was a Southern gentleman. First off, boy, with my mother, you know, she had him come in or brought him in, and he was a real gentleman. And after we talked a while, she went upstairs, left me alone with Howard, and she came back after 15 minutes or so, whatever, carrying a green suitcase that was this big and that thick. I've got it in my exercise room to this day. And it has the Alabama Roll Tide on the bottom of it. I put a sticker on it when I got down to Tuscaloosa. But she went in her purse, she gave me $20 and the suitcase, and we hugged and kissed, and she said, "You take them, Coach." She liked Coach Schnellenberger. She trusted him, and that's how I got to Tuscaloosa.
So, Joe, what was Tuscaloosa like back in those days?
Well, it was different. We did have one player from Pennsylvania on the team. He was a senior, a running back named Ray Abruzzi, a defensive back. He played more defense than offense, and so he was the only Yankee on the team. You know, I mean, the other guys, they were all homegrown, and a couple from Georgia. Ray Ogden, of course, was a freshman that had come in too with me late. And it was quite a transition. Fortunately, Coach Bryant was the leader. And Coach Bryant, and this is the ring that Coach Bryant gave his players, his seniors, if we have a national championship ring and some other things, but this one's from Coach Bryant to his seniors, the guys that lasted with him, and he made all the difference in the world. He was the man, he was the reason I got there, stayed there, and went through some tough times, and even after I was suspended for breaking a training rule, he told me that I could, he'd get me in another college. He said, "If you want to transfer, if you want to go someplace else now, I'll get you in a good spot." And I said, "No, Coach, no, sir. No, I want to stay." So he had plans for me, moved me out of the athletic dorm, and lived in another dorm, and wasn't able to get around the team for a while. But when spring training came back, he let me come out, and I had to earn my way back on the team. So one of the highlights of my life, besides my parents starting at home, was high school coach and Coach Bryant, man. And then I got lucky again with Weed Eubank, which is a totally different kind of
Yeah.
coach.
Joe, you mentioned your relationship with Coach Bryant. Can you tell us just a little bit about what that was like between the two of you? What all you learned from him? Obviously, I've heard you tell stories. I've read in your book the relationship that you guys had. Something that we like to ask Saban players from that era is like, what was it like to get chewed out by Saban? And you've talked obviously about coming face to face with Coach, but you obviously learned so much from him through that relationship.
Yeah, I sure did. And Mary Harmon, Coach Bryant's, I've started to say a better half, but dare not do that. But she was right up there. She kind of took me under her wing too whenever I got into some tough times, and it was a family affair. But Coach Bryant, he was a strict man. He's a military man, as you know, and he's a disciplinarian, and you had to do things his way, and because they were the right way, 99 plus percent of the time, and he was tough. He was tough. But the ball players around, going back to Pat Trammell, the quarterback on that '61 team that won the national championship, and Foxhead, Billy, oh man, the tight end. Anyway, those guys were real leaders. Bill Battle, I'm talking about.
Yep.
That was his nickname, Foxhead. I don't know how he got the Foxhead name, but that's what everyone called him. And I called him Sir, of course, as a freshman. We had some great leaders on that '61 team, Billy Neighbors, and if we freshmen didn't follow suit or try to emulate those guys to some extent, Coach Bryant had a way of being a little harder on those guys.
You know, it's amazing you name these names, and then there are people involved in this university today or within recent years with the same names. I mean, the Neighbor's name has gone on. Coach Battle became the athletic director at the university. It seems as though when people show up, they don't leave. What was it that made Alabama that special? What was that allure that it had to just keep you guys? I mean, here you are, what are you now, 35, 40 years old? And, and you're still loving Alabama. What was it about the school?
Well, first again, it started with Coach Bryant
Yeah.
and his way of helping us grow up, to take on responsibilities, to learn to do things properly, and endorsing again what hopefully you learned at home about respect for other people. And you had to do it his way. I mean, I can't tell you enough how many times he took me under his wing, so to speak, when I did have tough time. Mary Harmon, Mrs. Bryant, let me come out the house after I'd broken some training rules and was suspended, and kind of hid me from Coach Bryant there, looking after me. It was a family affair. And the transition coming from Pennsylvania with the other ball players too. As I mentioned, we had one defensive back, halfback from Philadelphia, Ray Abruzzi, who was the oldest player on the team. He had been to junior college. But Ray was loved by the other players. Ray was a terrific guy, a terrific football player, and that helped me tremendously, coming from being a Yankee, coming down from Pennsylvania. Having Ray be there at that time was very helpful.
What was the culture shock like? Because I'm from Brooklyn, and I moved from Brooklyn to Birmingham, Alabama. What was the culture shock like for you?
Well, first of all, the language. I didn't understand Coach Bryant whenever he was talking to me several times, or even the other guys. But I was basically the only white starter on our basketball team in high school in Beaver Falls, Pennsylvania. I was raised in a mixed neighborhood. Segregation was something that I had no concept of until I got down to the campus and started seeing what was going on. It was a change. I didn't even know that segregation existed. But Coach Bryant talked to me, and we had some righteous players. My roommate, named after General Pelham Butch Henry from Selma, Alabama. Coach Bryant got me. My first couple of roommates didn't quite last, and finally I got to room with Butch, and he was a year older than me, and Coach Bryant knew that Butch was righteous, so Butch took me under his wing and made sure I walked the line, so to speak.
Yeah.
Joe, how much did it bother you to come down to the South where segregation was part of the culture?
Again, it was a surprise, stunning. I wasn't aware of that even going on. I was ignorant to it. I didn't know that was even in our country. And bothered me, I was in a different place. I didn't throw me off. Coach Bryant explained some things, of course, to me, and that's the way this part of the world was. And I remember one of the highlights, though, a few years later, when our governor was standing on the steps of Foster Auditorium. Man, I was only about 2 rows back, and the federal man said, "Governor Wallace, step aside, sir. This is now a federal issue." And to this day, I can remember my mind's eye seeing Vivian, seeing that transition take place and that change take place. And I got goosebumps talking about it, thinking about it. But yeah, that changed, and thank God.
Joe, we see so many parallels between Coach Bryant's tenure in Tuscaloosa and obviously Coach Saban's, the effect that they have on players, not only as players, but as people too. I mean, whether it's the style of play, tough practices, the discipline, the standard. They always talk about how working with Coach Saban prepared them for life after college. And I wonder if that was the case with you playing for Coach Bryant. I mean, not to mention, not the attention that you got as a quarterback in New York where you have to compete and win at such a high level, but when you do that, you're meeting people like Frank Sinatra and Elvis Presley and Johnny Carson. How did your time at Alabama maybe help set you up for what you experienced later in life?
Well, it was Coach Bryant, especially. He treated people the way you should treat people. He was a disciplinarian. I mean, he demanded that you do the right things, and you bring up Coach Saban. Boy, these guys, you're talking about very special coaches in our lifetime, man. And they were great leaders of young men, and they were very demanding. You did it their way or you hit the highway, and if you wanted to be a part of the Crimson Tide and be a part of that atmosphere and love football, man, you learned to pay attention and you learned to do it their way. And it wasn't always the way I had done things back home in Pennsylvania or something. But change is constant. We either change for the better or change for the worse, but we're not going to stand still. And that carries on throughout life. Change, man, it's constant. So whenever you get it in your head that you got to change, you got to do it their way. And especially having those two specific guys. I've been lucky enough to be around Coach Saban now for several years. In fact, Mel Moore, Bird Dog, he was the senior quarterback when I was a sophomore on the team too, and we played together at Alabama. I loved him, and Mel called me when he was sitting outside Coach Saban's house down in Miami, trying to get Coach Saban to leave down here to come up to Tuscaloosa, man. And again, I got the goosebumps going. But Mel, he stayed right there for days. A couple of days, he's sitting in his car outside his house till he finally was able to get to talk to Coach Saban. And thank God for Mel Moore, boy. He was wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
Did he get you to
Amen
help?
to that. What is your relationship with Coach Saban, since he does have a home down near you? Do you see him a lot now? Do you guys cross paths in the frozen food section of the grocery store or anything?
I wouldn't say I see him a lot. You know, he does move around, but certainly we played golf together, and he's a much better golfer than I am. That's for sure. In fact, I don't play anymore, but I was surprised to see how well he played the game, how well
Really?
he evolved. Yes, sir. And also, I have a part of a couple of restaurants down here, and he's nice enough to come over there, and he Miss Terry every now and then, you know, and have dinner. People down here love him. I don't know, boy, he's a giant. Coach Saban's a giant, you know, and what he's done for the ball players. Years ago, maybe, I'm not sure about this, but I know today the coaches really do emphasize with the players the education, and we had to have study hall. Coach Bryant did that. You couldn't go out. You had study hall. And if you didn't read the book, if you didn't do the work, it didn't, okay, but you were in there. He demanded that you be in that room for a couple of hours, and it was checked by Dude Hennessy and Pat James. They'd be coming around, man, checking the room. Charlie Bradshaw, boy, you talk about a coach hands-on, especially on the practice field before he went up to Kentucky. Coach Bradshaw. We had some real disciplinarians or tough coaches, boy. So you learned that it wasn't your way. You learned.
When you worked in study hall, what was it like being the quarterback at Alabama in those days? What did you guys do when you weren't playing football, studying?
Okay, forget about when we weren't playing football. Let me go to the first game we played. First game I played as a sophomore. I was lucky. I won the job as a starter. We had 5 quarterbacks there. Jack Hurlbut, 2, Mel Moore, and Buddy French, and Grady Elmore, and I won the starting job. And we're playing Georgia, the first game, opening of the season and all. And coaches didn't call the plays. I was a nervous wreck. You know, went out on the field, man, you know, we're in the huddle for the first time. And I was so nervous, I recognized that. So I called a quarterback sneak. I had to get hit. I had to get behind Leroy. Jimmy Sharp, I had to get hit, man, because I was downright nervous, man. And I had never been that nervous in my life, I don't believe. But getting hit there in that first play kind of solved things, it made it better. But that night, I believe we beat Georgia 35-0. Oh, the story of a college football fix. Remember that time? It was a Time magazine or one of those magazines came out.
Yeah.
And that's a whole different thing, because Coach Bryant brought that up in a meeting a few days later. He held up the magazine. He said, looky here now. You know, they talked about Wally Butts and Coach Bryant fixing the game or talking about the game and stuff. And I knew it was a lie. I called every single play, you know. They trained us. The quarterbacks called the play. Pat Trammell was brilliant calling plays. He was a lot smarter than me, and he was a very good student. But Coach Bryant let us call the plays. So once we got going there, everything worked out all right.
Billy Neighbors said once that Pat Trammell was so smart and so brilliant. He was the only guy who could second guess Coach Bryant and get away with it. Was that accurate? Was he that brilliant of a young man?
Yeah, and he was that tough, and he was that mean. He was mean as a snake, man. And he came out with so many curse words on the practice field. Mrs. Trammell had come down to the campus, and Coach Bryant, he told us his story. And Coach Bryant said, you know, Pat's a wonderful student, you know, wonderful player. He said, but I can't get him to stop cussing out there in that field. I mean, he just uses damn this, darn that, damn it, go to. Anyway, she says, what the hell's wrong with that, coach? Every time, it's all right. He's learned that. He just, what the hell's so bad about talking about using damn and hell and everything? Coach Bryant told us as a teacher. I just stepped back. Yes, ma'am, you're right.
And for those of you who don't know, Pat Trammell graduated, became a doctor, and within a year or so got cancer and passed away. Was one of the great parts of the University of Alabama football history that Joe was just mentioning.
Yeah, we were saddened, of course. Pat was a young man, and had testicular cancer of some kind, and he died shortly after.
Yeah.
Joe, the Alabama fans, the program, everybody loves it when you get a chance to make it back to Tuscaloosa, and you've been the celebrity guest picker on College Game Day several times. During the past several decades, when you've come back, what has that meant to you that the fans always love having you back in Tuscaloosa, where you had so many of those wonderful days as the quarterback there?
It's home, I grew up there, and I went back every year I played pro ball. I went back there to train with the guys, the other pro players and some of the college guys. I went back in the off season all the time. I went back to get my degree. I just kept going back to Tuscaloosa. I love the people. I had friends there. I loved the coaching staff, and it was home.
And of course, when you came back, I had the thrill of having Kenny Stabler sitting to one side of me and Joe Namath sitting to the other side of me. I was smart enough to know all I needed to do was describe the play and then hush up, because those boys were going to take off and go. I'll tell you, I still miss the snake to this day, Joe.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. He was one of a kind, certainly a great player, and mischievous too.
Just slightly.
Just slightly. He might have left Tuscaloosa a few times to make that drive down to Mobile or South Alabama when he shouldn't, but he always got back.
Yeah, he was dating a young lady down there, and he figured out exactly how fast he had to go to get down there, have some time, and get back before practice resumed. But he was a huge talent, wasn't he?
Oh, wonderful. Well, he's great. He's a Hall of Famer. He's a great player.
Yeah.
He had all the tools and the mind. That was next to being in his home or something with his family, or whether football was number one, man. He lived it.
I just hated that they didn't put him in the hall until after he had passed away. That was too bad.
Well, yeah, hey, we don't get it right every single time,
Yeah.
but those of us, the people that recognize it, have known him and all, that he was going to come, and it did, and yeah, guys leave us too early, we don't have the script yet. We don't know from one day to the next if we're going to be around. You just
That's true.
Live each day as righteously as you can, as best you can, enjoy it, and again, treat folks the way you want them to treat yours. And but our time's up. We may not know it. It might just hit us, and we're history.
Hey, Joe, Eli does a great Stabler impression. I just wonder, do you have any Kenny Stabler impressions you can do for us?
No, I wouldn't dare try. I can't throw left-handed at all either, man. But no, I wouldn't touch that.
You have a favorite story with him? Favorite memory?
Oh man. Well, the Jungle Club was a spot that we might have visited a few times in Tuscaloosa. Had a couple of beers out there, just out there.
Might have, yeah.
But thank God we got back safely and never caused any trouble.
Yeah. What about Coach DeBoer and the current status of college football, the transfer portal, the NIL stuff? Do you like what you see or not, Joe?
I love it. I love Greg Byrne. I love the way he's taking care of things. And I got to talk to Coach DeBoer just as he was coming to the campus and visiting. I just think the world of him. And again, Greg did his homework. We got a real leader, a great coach, and I think we're seeing it. We're seeing the team perform very well, and he's conducted himself better than I ever thought about conducting myself or could. I imagine the folks in Tuscaloosa and throughout the state of Alabama are happy that we have him.
How about the money aspect of it? The NIL is, I mean, it's unbelievable. Your $400,000 signing with Sonny Werblin those many years ago, that's like chump change today to some of these kids to play college ball.
Well, I have seen some changes. You guys have seen some changes. I shined shoes when I was growing up, and you got a nickel for a dime shine. You got part of that. I caddied when I was growing up. My first official job, my daddy got me for the city of Beaver Falls. I made $1 an hour, 40 hours a week. Take home pay was $37 and change. I filled my gas up with regular gas that was 18 cents a gallon. And I was able to fill that old 52 Ford up for $4. Yeah, I've seen some changes, numbers, and I get concerned thinking, and I don't dwell on it much, but I do have 6 grandchildren, and I do have a couple of daughters in their 30s. What's it going to be in 20 years from now? What's it going to be in 30 years from now? Huh? Can you guys imagine that? What are the numbers going to be like in 50 years from now? We're talking grocery shopping, rent, whatever, housing, not just the ball players. I understand the ball players getting big bucks. It's television. Television is generating such numbers that the negotiations between the leagues, whether it's the NBA or the NFL or Major League Baseball, yeah, those guys have done a good job in negotiating what's fair to the players.
So, do you ever wonder what a 19, 20-year-old Joe Namath would do in today's college football as a player?
Well, I'd be bigger and stronger. We never had a weight room in high school, college, or pro football. You know, they train better today. The food, the nutrition, the people, the whole team around you, getting players ready to play, the guidance. You know, there's more things going on. They've learned how to feed people, make them stronger, keep them focused, making it maybe more fun, giving them less free time possibly, but that less free time is constructive time, you know, productive time.
So you'd be better.
We can't change that part.
Yeah.
Things change. You know, I was gifted in a sense. Thank God, I was quick. I had quick feet, and I was played ball since I was a little kid, man. So I was always thinking, you know, thinking ahead or thinking. I had some great coaching. I mentioned my high school coach, Larry Bruno, early on, and when he came to our high school my junior year, man. Before he even got there, he had me over his house in the summertime working on footwork. You know, as he had me in his backyard working on footwork, man. If I'm going to go there, my first step isn't here, it's there. The footwork went in the right direction correctly instantly. You know, it wasn't halfway around, it was all the way around. I learned to pivot my hips using things, and I had some great high school coaching. And then Coach Bryant, you know, he had a way of toughening us up mentally for sure, and doing it his way, which was right. And pro ball with Weave Eubank.
You know, a totally unfair question here as we get closer to the end of our visit, but was there one player that you played with or two that are always at the top of the list as far as the best players you've played with? You know, I was thinking about that earlier today because I knew you back in the days. Well, I didn't know you, but I followed you in the days with, you know, Matt Snell and Emerson Boozer and George Sauer and all these great receivers that you had, Don Maynard and so on, not to mention the college days and not to mention your time, you know, Al Atkinson defensively and so on, and Big Sherman Plunkett. I mean, who was was there one guy that you said, my Lord, what a spectacular player?
You mentioned so many of them right there, boy. I tell you. With Don Maynard, he's a Hall of Famer himself. Sherman Plunkett, he's the one that gave me that Broadway Joe nickname.
Yep, sure did.
And Sherman was sitting across the dressing room from us, and Sherman, well, I used to have to carry his helmet off the field when I was a rookie. And that helmet was heavy, man. He had like 4 ripples behind his neck. He was so big. We didn't have a scale that could weigh Sherman. He was over 300 pounds.
Yeah.
A short story, we went out to San Diego to play out there, and we were practicing at a place that had a livestock scale. You put cattle on or do whatever, all right? So we've announced that, fellas, tomorrow we're gonna find out how much Sherman Plunkett weighs. Well, the next day we got there, we're all anxious. Well, there's a piece of the scale over there, a piece over there, a piece over there. Somehow Sherman got in there and got that scale torn apart. Boy, we never did find out how much he weighed.
He was a big, I mean, you folks, if you've never seen a picture of Sherman Plunkett, you needed a full tank of gas to drive around him. I mean, he was a big boy. But, he could play, but and that's what I remember too, because I was a big guy. I love the big uns because he could play.
He had quick feet.
Yeah.
He had good feet, good footwork. Yeah, he was very good.
Yeah.
Joe, what did you think of that name, Broadway Joe? You mentioned he gave you the nickname Broadway Joe. What did you think when you first heard that? It's obviously had staying power.
Yeah, well, when I first heard it, I was ducking too because my players, the defensive guys, are throwing the magazine at me. It was the pictures, they're hitting me from all sides, throwing the mag. Yeah, Broadway. Jerry Philbin was the leader in that, and he was a great defensive end, But I forget what you even asked me now.
The name Broadway Joe, when you first heard it, what did you think of that?
Well, it came from Sherman. It came from Sherman Plunkett. I mean, I'm sitting in my locker there. The magazine was there. I looked at it, put it away because you don't want to be reading about yourself in front of your guys or something. You know what I mean? And Sherman's sitting right across the thing, and I'm getting ready and look over. And I promise you, Larry Grantham, guys, defensive players, Jerry Philbin, they threw the magazines physically at me in my locker, right? And I look over there at Sherman, and Sherman's chuckling a little bit, and he just looks up and he chuckles. He says, "Oh, Broadway Joe." And that's the first time I ever heard it. Came from Sherman with that smile on his face, man, and it was always an uplifting thing, and it still is.
That's great.
Well, Joe, this has been such an honor talking to you. You're an Alabama legend, a sports legend. You're one of the greatest of all time. And I just want to say thanks to you and Eli for taking some time and sharing your stories with us.
Well, let me finish this by saying, and this is a fact, it's not trying to be corny or whatever, but you learn along the way. It's about us. It's not all about me. Life, the big game of life, is a team effort. It's a team game. We win a championship on different levels. Those guys up front in the pits, right there, that's where it starts. Right there. If you're out in the backyard and your 2 guys trying to block for you aren't good, you're not going to be able to run very far. So the game of football, to me, starts with those cats up front. Sure, you need the guy to be able to be Kenny Stabler or be able to handle the ball and all. But if you don't have that offensive line, and then on defense, if you don't have those cats, it's going to be a long day. So life in itself is a team effort. We treat one another the way we want to be treated and the way we should treat people, civilly, and hopefully with a little love, and we'll all get along a little bit better.
Amen to that.
Excellent, Joe. Thank you so much. Eli, Michael, I'm Ben Flanagan. Thank you for watching and listening. We really appreciate it. Beat Everyone is brought to you by Broadway Joe's Fantasy Sports, inspired by football legend Joe Namath. Embrace the thrill of daily fantasy sports like never